Hi, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Late Night Laravel. Today we're going to be creating a simple address book, but we're going to be introducing a couple of new concepts in Laravel, such as the global scopes, as well as some file uploading. So, just as last time, we're starting off with our existing Laravel application with the previous authentication that we built in episode 1. And again, if you want to check out how we built that, I'll link it in the description below. Okay, let's start off with our routes. And again, we'll start with creating a route group for this address book with the prefix Addressbook, a namespace Addressbook, and of course the middleware auth API. Now an address book is pretty simple. We just need 4 basic APIs, one to list, one to add, one to edit, and one to delete. So let's create those. We'll have a get API to list all the contacts in our address book. We'll give that name list contacts, and we put a controller called contacts, which we'll make later on, and let it call a function list contacts in that controller. Next, we have the add contact API, which will be a post. We'll name it add contact, and again it'll call the add function inside the contacts controller. Next, we need an edit contact API, which will be pretty similar to the add contact. And lastly, we need delete API, which will simply delete a contact from our list. Now in terms of parameters, we'll pass the contact ID in the edit as well as the delete API, and we'll use Laravel's model binding to define that. Okay, let's define our model. We'll use the PHP artisan command, and we put it in the models/addressbook/ and we'll call our model contact, and I'm also going to pass -m to create the migration file. So let's check that. Yes, we have the address book, and inside that we have the contact model. And similarly, we have our migrations defined. So let's continue with the migrations. I'll just change the timestamps to time zone simply because that's good practice. So let's define 4 columns: a name, email, phone, and location. I'll keep most of them nullable just so we don't have to run into problems with our database. And of course, we need to link a user ID to our contact so we know who owns it. And in our model, let's tell Laravel to use the soft delete trait, and let's define the user relationship. This will be a simple belongs to, and we put in the user model linked via the user ID key. Now that we've defined our relationship, we know that every contact is associated with a particular user ID. So typically, you would use the user ID to query your database every time you want to fetch data. Now Laravel has a concept called query scopes, where you can define it once and it'll always apply to every query on that particular model. So that way, we don't have to keep writing it all over again. So how do we define scopes? It's really simple. All you need to do is create a class with your own name and implement the Laravel scope interface. So I'm going to create a directory called scopes, and let's create a new class. We'll give it a name owner scope, because that makes sense. The contact is owned by that user. And let's implement Laravel's scope interface. And as you can see, it's made us a class with a predefined function called apply. And this is where we add our code to apply the query scope. So the way you use it, you use the query builder and add that constraint into your query. So I'm going to add where the user ID is always equal to the authenticated user. Next, we need to tell Laravel that our contact model needs to use the scope. So inside our contact model, we need to override the function called booted and tell Laravel to use the owner scope that we just defined. And it's as simple as that. So now every time we query that model, it'll apply this scope. Okay, now that we've added the scopes, let's create our controller. And just as last time, we'll put it inside the API v1 and we'll create a new directory called Addressbook and we put our controller in there. So I'm going to create the controller using the php artisan command. So php artisan make controller and we'll specify the path and we'll call our controller contacts. And let's just check. Yes, it's created our contacts controller. So now it's pretty straightforward. We need to create our 4 functions. One to list the contacts, which will take the request parameter, the add contact, the edit contact, and in the edit contact, the first parameter will be our contact object. And similarly, the delete contact, where the first parameter will again be the contact object. So just as always, I'm going to code all this in a time lapse and I'll see you in a few seconds. Okay, let's quickly go through what we coded. We have our 4 functions, the list, add, the edit, and the delete. This corresponds to our APIs. Now inside the list contacts function, we have 2 conditions. I'll get to the first part later on. In the second part, we're simply calling the paginate function. And notice we didn't have to specify the user ID because our owner scope is already being applied. Now what we did up here is we allowed a parameter called search key, and if that parameter is passed, Laravel will query the database and search for that particular key in either the name, the phone, or the email and return all the results that have a match. Next we have the add contact, and here I'm just validating the parameters that we've passed, the name, phone, email, and location. And of course, I have to remind you, if this was a production app, you need to add your own validations to make sure it's secure. So we're simply taking all the input, saving it into the database, and responding with a 200 or a 400 status. Next is the edit contact function, where, as you recall, we passed the entire contact object. So Laravel will automatically create that object for us. We're validating anything new that comes in and simply replacing those values into the object. Last but not the least, the delete function, which simply deletes the model. Okay, with all that ready, I think we can run our migration command now. So let's open the terminal, php artisan migrate, and let's check the database. It should have created a new table called contacts with our 5 columns. Yes, we have our name, email, phone, location, and user ID. Next, let's check that our routes are correct with the route list command. We scroll up And yes, we can see all our Addressbook APIs are right there. Now let's open up Postman, and as you can see, we have those 3 same APIs from episode 1, and we have our 4 new APIs which I've added from our current code. So the list, the add, the edit, and the delete contact APIs. So let's try out the list contacts. We just need to add the authorization key. So let's run the login API. I'll grab the access token from here, copy it, paste it in there, and let's hit send. And right now, of course, there's no contacts. So let's add one contact. Again, I'll paste the token in the authorization. And in the body, we have those 4 parameters. Let's add some data. When we hit send, the new contact is added. So let's add one more. And let's check the list now. And as you can see in the list, we have now 2 contacts. So let's try out the edit contact. We'll edit the second one. And again, there are those 4 parameters. So I'm going to change some values in here and edit it. And oops, we forgot the token. Let me quickly copy that. And there we go. It's edited in both lists. So let's add one more contact. We'll name him John Doe this time. And as you can see, it's added a 3rd contact. Now let's try to delete that one. And we'll pass the ID 3. Again, the token. And there we go, contact deleted. Now there's one more thing that we want to add. We want the ability to upload an image for each contact. So Laravel has a very easy way to upload files to our storage. And you'll see it's just really one line that we need to add. So let's go back into our code. And straight after a contact has been saved, we want to upload and store the image. So in this app, we'll keep the path as storage/contacts, the user ID, as well as the contact ID, and then we'll fix the name as profile image. And the way you upload the file in Laravel is simply by calling the file function in the request object and chaining it with the store as function and telling it which path to store it in. And we want to do the same exact thing when we edit. So we'll put that same line of code after the contact has been edited. And again, since the path is constant, you can see there's no change in our database. We're not really saving this path. Now another thing you need to do is run the storage link command. What this does is tells Laravel to link the private storage path and allow it to be publicly accessible. Now there are many other ways you can do this. This is just the simplest way and it's well documented by Laravel. So let's try that out in Postman. Let's add a new contact. We put in Jane Doe this time, and I'll just change some more values just to make it unique. And this time we'll add a new parameter, which will be a file. The name of the parameter will be picture, and we can upload the file here. So now when we hit send, you can see the response is exactly the same. And even in the list, it just added a new contact with ID 4. But since we know the storage path is constant, we can access that profile image by typing in the URL itself. So the URL would be localhost/storage/contacts, the current user ID, and the contact user ID /profileimage.jpg. So there you see, it's loaded in the browser. Since we added the code for edit as well, let's try the edit API. And we'll edit an existing contact, and let's add a file here. with same parameter name picture. And as you can see again, there's no change in the output. There's no change in the list either. However, if we open our browser and we type in the path storage/contacts/12, that's our user ID, and the contact ID was 2, and that's the picture that we just uploaded. And there you have it, a basic functional address book that you can use. You can upload a picture and you can search through your list. Now, of course, you can add your own features. You can enhance this, you can add more things. That's completely up to you, but this is a great starting point for your address book. And just as last time, I'm going to show you a demo how you can use this API in an actual functioning product. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hit that like button if you liked, or leave a comment if you have something to add, and I'll see you in the next one.